Bali 9 member Andrew Chan has had his clemency plea rejected and he now faces the death penalty by firing squad. Earlier this morning, his co-accused Myron Sukumaran received notice that his appeal had been turned down.
Yes, that was last month. Now, Melbourne pastor Christy Buckingham, well, she's travelled regularly with her husband to Karabokan prison to see both men. She's part of the Mercy campaign, and she joins us along with Indonesian expert Professor Frank Palmos. Thank you to both of you this morning for coming in. This is must be heartbreaking for you. You've really genuinely worked with these two men and believe that they have been quite transformed from when they committed the crime over 10 years ago.
Yes, and to see their efforts, and they are selfless efforts on a daily basis. They work very hard inside that prison to help others that will actually be being released. So the news is daunting, and as you can imagine, I've been in contact with the families, and it's daunting.
And Frank, where to from now? What can the Australian government do, if anything, at this late hour now for the members of the so-called Bali 9?
Well, I'd be inclined not to do anything. In fact, I think the Prime Minister's been very poorly informed. There's a saying in Indonesia that is very appropriate for this, and it goes something like this: "Bungkem dalam seribu bahasa." That means you should remain silent in 1,000 languages. I don't think that it was appropriate for him I don't think it will be appropriate for him to make any further appeals on behalf of these boys. The situation is obviously dire for them, but then again, it's self-serving for them to rehabilitate themselves and to be seen as wishing to save their lives. And perhaps it's better for them to be in sort of a situation where you're just endlessly in a jail in Bali than facing a firing squad. But I think they'll be shot, and I think they'll be shot fairly quickly.
And do you think, Frank, that, for example, we saw that happening last week where 6 people were shot, plaintive requests from the Netherlands government fell on deaf ears? Do you think that harmed the case, or do you think there is just no other way forward but the firing squad here?
Well, certainly for the Netherlands to withdraw their ambassador is a height of hypocrisy, because it's only, remember, you're speaking now to an historian who's studied the interference of the Dutch government, have killed tens of thousands of Indonesians to stop them becoming independent, whereas Australia has a much, much better record in promoting their independence. So for them to withdraw an ambassador in protest over this matter is rather hypocritical in my opinion. But let me just point out one other thing here, and Christy's making a very good point. But the population of New Zealand is 4.4 million. So the entire population of New Zealand within Indonesia, there are 4.4 million totally ruined addicts. Now, they are a huge drain on the economy. They kill, they maim, they steal, they stab, they rob to get more drugs. These drugs are coming in from all over Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Thailand, Afghanistan, and so on. They're very cheap to make, and they're very easily landed in Indonesia because we've got hundreds and hundreds of islands, and they're unable to protect their borders. The public feeling against drugs is quite extraordinary, no matter what we...
And I don't disagree with that in any form or description, but the reality is that killing is never good on any point. I work with both sides. I work with people, I've sat with people whose children have died of overdoses. They have pleaded with me this week. They have said, 2 wrongs do not make a right, killing somebody else's son. And especially, I hear what Frank is saying about them being self-serving, and perhaps at the beginning it was like that. But I can tell you, I have been there. I look in these boys' eyes. I know who they are, and they are completely... Their biggest concern is, if this is carried through, who will take up the role?
And you've said they've been campaigning them. They've become campaigners against
I have
drugs.
taken people in there, young adults and teenagers, and I can tell you now that they will never, ever go down the path of touching drugs after talking to those boys. Those boys realise they've made a drastic mistake, and in Indonesian law there is actually a place for rehabilitation. There is a place if the condemned is rehabilitated and shows a lengthy period of rehabilitation, which these boys have with the projects inside, that they will not be executing. Executing them is not the answer. That's why we're saying to people, and interestingly, Indonesia on the petitions is number 4, saying we don't want to see these petitions, and it's climbing daily. In fact, unfortunately, our website has gone down. The traffic has been so full on.
Frank, where does Joko Widodo's place here as a new leader stand? I don't believe there are public executions for some 12 months before this.
No. He's faced with having to pick up a presidency that was known for not making any decisions. It was not so much incompetent, but it was an indecisive government for an awful long time, and he has to reverse this.
Frank, you talk of hypocrisy. Why does Indonesia request for prisoners to return to Indonesia and be dealt there? Why don't they listen to other countries to do the same thing?
I don't know.
That is a very good point. That's what we're asking. Why do they do that?
I don't know. And the other question there, of course, arises if you're going to start shooting the people who, or let's say executing the people who have been clearly guilty of their charges. It's probably high time that the thugs in Bali that sell on every corner unmolested are also picked up, because that's one of the biggest complaints.
And there's no crackdown on it because there's this sort of corruption that exists.
The crackdowns last for minutes only, you know, and it's a showy thing. So Jokowi's got to do something about this. That's why he was swept into power.
And on a reforming an agenda, this was, I think, the last thing that people expected from Jokowi, not necessarily not to take firm actions, but to use this as a kind of show of force. But
in terms of actually moving forward with the UN and the EU, people are calling for a wiser approach to this. And, you know, they have got provisions in relation to reform. These boys are reformed. I can vouch for them. Other people who've seen them can vouch for them. The governor of the prison made an unprecedented appeal that he has seen their reform. What more do we need? How else can we prove reform? And so the people around them, prisoners that are now in jobs, now living responsible lives because of their reformation programs.
Just finally, what have you made? We spoke earlier in the week about how there doesn't seem to be a massive groundswell of a vocal campaign to have these two not executed. We heard more about Schapelle Corby than the Bali night.
There's been a little bit of confusion. Some people think that we're saying, let them out of prison. That's absolutely ridiculous. We are not saying that. We are saying they are in a unique position. I visited Andrew one day and I said, are you okay? And he said, I've just had a problem. One of the people that was meant to be in a class didn't go, and they said to Andrew, you don't understand what I'm going through. And Andrew looked at them and said, really? They're in a unique position to help. Professionals come into the prison and leave again. So what we're saying is we are not saying that to let them out of prison. We're saying give them a chance to rehabilitate others that will be on the streets of Bali with your children.
Frank, what do you think the chances of the second judicial review will be that the lawyers are trying for now?
None.
No chance at all? Won't even come before the courts?
No.
And how early do you think?
Get used to it.
How early do you think?
Follow Julie Bishop's advice, who's a magnificent foreign minister, and I think if the Prime Minister...
so is Julie Bishop giving contradictory advice to that Tony Abbott is acting on?
I don't think so. I think that she would have followed that ancient Javanese saying, silence in 1,000 languages.
All right. Well, it's a difficult topic, but we do thank you for bringing your unique perspectives to it. Thanks very much for joining us. And to Paul's point, it's been interesting to see whether there is going to be a gathering speed now of protest, but the time is very, very tight, as we heard from George Roberts in Indonesia earlier on. It could be a month and then a matter of days that they are given notice of their execution.